Don't you ever get tired of all this?
What, building Lego? I could do this all day. Alright people, let's do this one last time. I'm Josh. I was not bitten by a radioactive spider. A few years ago I had the bright idea to record myself building some Lego, and a few years later here I am thinking I am the one and only Josh Builds Stuff. It may seem like we are jumping between superhero references here. We got Cap in the intro, we got Spider-Man now, and look, Thor's hammer is also here. That's because today we are talking about the 3 brand new Marvel mechs released in 2021. Of course, we have the Miles Morales Mech, the Thor Mech, and Captain America's Mech. All 3 of these sets were released January 1st, 2021. Each contain about 120-130 pieces, and the best part about them, they only cost $10 a piece. So we'll look at each of these mechs a little more closely. I'll give you my likes and dislikes about them. We'll look at the minifigures contained within each one of them. I'll compare Tommy Lee Jones to my disappointed father, and we'll compare these 3 mechs to the previous 3 mechs that we got last year, all coming up right after the build. When I first bought these 3 new mechs, I was fully prepared to say that the builds for each of them were basically the same build repeated 3 times. And after having completed all 3 builds, I can say with confidence that that's basically the case. And while we're at it, the builds of these 3 mechs was also basically the same as the builds for the previous 3 mechs that we'll look at in a few minutes. There were of course minor differences in the details and colors between the 3 different characters, but the basic structure and construction process was basically the same across all 3. The builds don't really have time to become repetitive because there are so few pieces contained within each set, so in my experience you barely have time to watch the first half of Captain America the First Avenger, but I suppose you can always finish your watch through at a later time. Which of these 3 mechs is my favorite? Ooh, tough question that you're forcing me to answer right off the bat. I'm gonna say Thor, because he might just be my favorite character out of the 3. He's got a lot going on and he's got a big hammer. But his hammer's actually mostly like trans blue pieces, which I'm not crazy about it. I wish it was a real hammer. No, I've changed my mind. My answer is Miles Morales. I think Miles Morales is my favorite of the 3 mechs. Don't give me that look, Captain America. Pretty boy. No, but really each of these mechs is pretty cool in their own right. So let's go over some likes and dislikes in general and specifically, as if there was a third option. We'll do generalities, we'll do specifics, and I guess we'll make some metaphors along the way. Things I like about these sets. First of all, they're only $10 a piece, which is a really great deal. You get a little minifigure with each one, you get a little robot with each one. I guess it's a mech, not a robot. They call it a mech armor, but whatever. I think for $10, that's a steal. And now I've got 3 sets for only 30 bucks. That's a good deal. Besides the price, each of these mechs is very posable. They're basically Lego's little answer to action figures, so you can play with them a lot and you can make them pose and do really cool looking, very superhero looking things. That being said, that brings me to one of my very few downsides about these sets, and I think I said this in the previous mech review video, and that was that it might be a little difficult to get these figures to pose a way that actually looks cool, or that you can actually get them to balance to stand up if you are a smaller kid. In this case, I am not a small kid, I am a large adult. Okay, I'm a regular size adult, let's not get too crazy. I have New Year's resolutions. I'm gonna walk on the treadmill, I'm gonna roller skate a few times this year. But as a moderately sized adult, I have no problem posing these dudes into cool looking superhero poses. But as a kid, it may be easy to accidentally, I don't know, scrunch the legs in such a weird way that you can't actually get the character to balance. Maybe I'm just speaking from the perspective of a 3-year-old, which I have at least one of, and so I think maybe an older kid would probably be fine in that respect, but I'm digging a little bit to find negatives about these sets, and one negative is that it may be a little hard to pose these sets. One positive is that they are very posable, so I don't know, take that as you will. Here's another positive, they're displayable and playable. I know, I need to come up with slightly better words than that to use in LEGO review videos because I use those two a lot, but what I mean is that because these are like action figures, you could display them on a shelf if you really wanted to, and then you could also play with them and make them battle against each other if you were into that kind of thing. I've heard of some people that would do that sort of thing, you know, like collect a bunch of Star Wars Black Series figures and display them all over a big cabinet, and I don't know, to me it sounds like a bit of a waste of money, and you better have a pretty understanding wife to undertake a habit like that one. I hear there's a new Jar Jar Black Series figure. Who would spend their good, hard-earned money on a Jar Jar Binks action figure? That's a very specific dig at one particular friend of mine. I'm sure the rest of you who collect Star Wars Black Series action figures are perfectly normal, rational people. I'm just using this reference as a gauge to see when that particular friend might happen to watch this video, and if he responds to me in like 6 months and sends me a message and he's like, hey, that was a reference to me in the video. He doesn't actually sound like that. All right, he sounds a little bit like that, but if he responds to me in like 6 months, then I'll know that he's not keeping up with the latest Josh Build Stuff videos, and him and his kids are definitely not getting sent new Lego sets in 2021, unlike Jameson, who I know watches my videos right off the bat. What up, Jay? Keep an eye on your mailbox because some of these new mechs might be headed your way very soon. Other things we like about these mechs. Thematically, they have some really cool little elements that I think really define who the characters are that each of these mechs is meant to represent. Like Miles Morales Spider-Man, obviously he's covered in a bunch of cool webbing, his colors are on point. Thor's got like those cool cape-looking things hanging off the back of him, because obviously the mech itself doesn't have a cape, but I think that's a cool like robotic depiction of what a cape might look like if it were on a mech. Cap is a little simpler as far as mechs go. He basically just has a red, white, and blue color scheme, and then he's holding a shield, but I guess as a character he's a little less defined, and that's kind of his defining traits, is that, hey, he's got red, white, and blue, and he carries a shield. But, you know, overall I think the aesthetics of each of these mechs were nailed really well. Negatives about the mechs, I pointed out the one, it may be a little hard for small children to pose these mechs. Then again, I guess LEGO gives you a specific age range that these mechs would be appropriate for, and maybe that's not a legitimate criticism. The only other negative that I can really think of across these three mechs, and I'm digging a little bit here to find one, is that Thor contains a couple of stickers. I think all three of the previous mechs contain stickers, and so it's not that big of a deal. Cap and Spider-Man, in this case, don't have stickers, which is always nice to see. A lot of LEGO fans see stickers as a negative in general. We'd almost always rather see a printed plastic piece, much like Captain America's shield here. I've even heard of some people having a general phobia of stickers in everyday life. Not that I would know much about that, but I've heard that it may or may not stem from some elementary school trauma of someone putting a kick me sign on their back that's just kind of followed them throughout their life. But like I said, I wouldn't know much about that. Let's quickly talk minifigures across these three mechs. We got three mechs, three minifigures, and each of them are very cool. I think there are even some new components in them. Thor, I think that's a new helmet for him. Miles Morales, I think that's a new headpiece, torso, and new hood. Captain America, I think it's a new torso and at least his hood. I think that only appeared in one other set, but even so, these are three cool minifigures. I'm adding a downside to one of these mechs, and that's that Miles Morales has small, skinny feet for some reason. Literally all of the mechs that we've gotten up to this point have these big old plated feet, which make it very easy to stand up straight. Miles Morales, for some reason, has very skinny, like long, thin feet. I don't know if it's I'm assuming it was a character aesthetic kind of choice, but it makes him a little more difficult to stand up. Before we compare these 2021 mechs to the previous three who are waiting patiently in the wings, I thought it would be a fun exercise to think about other characters who we would like to see portrayed in mech form. You tell me which Marvel characters you would like to see made into mechs, and I'll tell you which I would like to see right now. I'm thinking of three characters who would complement each of our new mechs. Specifically for Miles Morales, I think it'd be super cool to have a Prowler mech. I don't know that this Miles Morales figure is necessarily based on the Spider-Verse movie, but that Prowler character was wicked cool. He's got that cool black and purple color scheme, plus every time he shows up on screen, he has that wicked, weird looking like low guitar growl that goes on. It's like... And, you know, I think the mech should somehow incorporate that sound effect into him, but I think, wouldn't that be super cool? Give me a Prowler mech to display alongside my Miles Morales mech. Next, to complement Thor, I think it's an obvious choice. He's getting a new TV show next year. We need a Loki mech. I think the green and gold color scheme would look really cool in this form. You could do something cool with the cool horned helmet or whatnot, but obviously a Loki mech would be the obvious choice to complement Thor. As for Captain America, I'm going to go a little less conventional route. You might think Peggy Carter or even Red Skull as a cool villain. No, I'm going someone different. I'm going a Tommy Lee Jones mech. Obviously, we can't have a flat-out Tommy Lee Jones mech, as much as we all might like that, but I think we should have a Colonel Chester Phillips mech. That's the character who Tommy Lee Jones portrayed in the first Captain America movie, and a character which unfortunately was done away with pretty much after that movie. You can't deny that Tommy Lee has some very specific qualities that make him stand out. To me, he reminds me of my father. That might just be because he has a constant look of disappointment on his face, even though I can't think of any life choices that I I may have made that would lead to disappointment from a father figure, like starting a YouTube channel that focuses on children's toys. But besides all that, Tommy still saves the day, because if you think about it, at the end of that Captain America movie, when Cap's chasing down Red Skull's plane and he can't quite keep up, who shows up but Agent K driving Red Skull's cool looking V12 looking, I don't know, crazy hot rod vehicle? Probably a BMW, they're German after all. And then Tom picks up Cap and they're speeding down the runway chasing after the plane, and then Peggy gives Captain America a kiss, and then Tommy Lee Jones is all like, I ain't kissing you, as he's driving the car, and then Captain America jumps onto the hydroplane, which, let's be honest, it's really just like a Northrop XB-35 flying wing bomber that's painted some cool matte black color to look like some weird Hydra prototype plane. But if Tommy hadn't picked up Cap and driven him down that runway, then Captain America never would have stopped Red Skull, and the Tesseract wouldn't have fallen through the ice or whatever, and none of the MCU could have been possible. So that is my petition to give us a cool looking Tommy Lee Jones, I guess it could be Colonel Phillips mech, that would go along with this new line of mechs. Whew. Alright, we've gotten a bit off track, but I promised I would compare the 3 new mechs to the previous 3 that we got, so let's do that. Last year we got an Iron Man, a Spider-Man, and a Thanos mech. And because these 2 sets of mech sets were released so far apart, it's hard not to think of these as like the old ones were the first generation mechs and the new ones are like the newer generation and they should be much improved or very different. But in reality, all 6 of these mechs are very similar to each other. The basic construction, the builds, the style, the size, everything about them is basically the same. All 6 of these sets could have been released simultaneously and they would have fit in perfectly alongside each other as if they were all a part of the same generation of sets. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said earlier, I would love to see more of this size of set because 1, the characters are very cool, and 2, like I said earlier, they're only 10 bucks a piece, so just load me up on them. I will note though, we're a little disproportionate when it comes to heroes versus villains. What I have before me are 5 good guys and only a single bad guy. Granted, it is Thanos, who is kind of the ultimate bad guy, and I know there was a Venom mech release, which I think was about in this same scale, but that's kind of a part of the Spider-Man sets, not the Avengers sets, even though 2 of these, the Miles Morales and the Spider-Man, are technically a part of the Spider-Man sets. It's a little weird. It's like the whole Sony versus Disney thing and who owns Spider-Man and what theme are these sets actually a part of. Is it all Marvel or some of these Avengers or some of these Spider-Man sets? I don't know. It's a bit weird, but like I said, we're missing some more villains, so give me some more bad guys to go along with all of these good guys. So in trying to find some more comparable elements between the old sets and the new sets, I'll note that all 3 of the old sets contain stickers, even though only Thor among the new sets contains stickers. But besides that, honestly, these 6 sets are very, very similar to each other. All of them use the exact same number of ball joints to give them articulation. All of their feet look basically the same, except for Miles Morales. He's still got them skinny feet. I don't know why those are done so differently. Other than that, the only real differences between the old and new mechs really just come down to individual figures, and I don't think those differences are due to them being the older generation or the newer generation. I think it's just up to LEGO at this point to decide what kind of new unique elements may fit into a particular mech, like, I don't know, the cool Infinity Gauntlet on Thanos, or obviously cool things like Thor's hammer or Captain America's shield. So there's definitely not a huge generational difference between the old and new mechs, and I think they all look great side by side, which in my opinion I think is a good thing because LEGO can continue to introduce new characters in this same exact size and scale, and they would fit in perfectly with all of the existing mechs. Man, I feel like I have spoken a lot of words to describe $30 worth of new LEGO, but they're great little sets, like I said before. But if you made it this far in the video, maybe you're the real superhero. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about these 3 new mechs in the comments down below. Also, let me know what characters you think would make good candidates for the next set of LEGO mechs. I suggested Tommy Lee Jones, so there are obviously no wrong answers, unless you are, of course, speaking to my father, in which case it feels like every answer you give is the wrong answer. Boy, that man can look disappointed like no other. Well, like Tommy Lee Jones, I guess. That's not true. My father is a wonderful, a kind, and a very caring man, and I miss him dearly. Only because he lives kind of far away. He's perfectly fine as far as I know, but I should call him more. All of that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.